Ladies and gentlemen, today is April 21st, 2015. And this is the KNKL Show, episode 224. I'm your host, Keenan Lafferty, and today is Tutorial Tuesday, where we learn to be better artists, and just so happens that we are going to be jumping back into the lovely JINX, my favorite champion of all time. My favorite champion of all time in the League of Legends. JINX, that's right, she is done. Wow, I got to work last week. We are completely done with it. And I'm going to be taking you guys through the time lapse, dissecting it slowly, right? As slow as I possibly can. And then we'll go through and just kind of click through some of these layers and make things disappear, like JINX herself, the entire JINX. But before we get into that, we need to talk about a couple things. And that is, first of all, your guys' awesome art. So let's go ahead and get through that. The lovely Lane. Thank you guys so much for joining, liking the Facebook. Please, if you'd like to join us, submit your art, get featured on the show. Just type in that little tiny URL and you can go check out these pieces for yourself. Like and submit your very own art and I will feature it. And I love the guys. I love the things you guys have been sending over. So thank you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. All right. And last but not least, yes, the last thing that I will say is that all of my PSDs, including this one today, is going to be made available on my Patreon. So if you guys are interested, and you're watching it on YouTube, click that link in the bottom right. And people on the chat, you can go check it out on Patreon, but I don't have the link saved to my clipboard, so you guys will just have to go to Patreon. Or somebody awesome can post the Patreon in the chat. All right, that's enough of that. Let's go ahead and get into the time lapse. Into the actual tutorial, shall we? So where we left off last time was we had just finished creating the lines, and for those of you who may have wanted to see how we got to this point, I have part 1 and part 2 done on YouTube, so you can go check that out. But let's go ahead and get into this. Let's go ahead and get into where we were going last time and what we're doing now. So basically what I'm doing for the background, this is one of the newest things that I like to do. Basically whenever I'm creating a splash art or just anything that has a lot of heavy lighting in it, I find it very beneficial to actually do the background first, even though that's probably not something you guys wanted to hear yourselves. It's like, oh no, but I hate backgrounds. I don't even know how to do them, right? Like that was my mentality. It's like, I hate background. It's like, just put a white sheet behind it. Just put something, just put one color behind it, a little gradient, this and that, and just call it good. All right, but what I've found that is very important, that if you're going to be doing ambient lighting, you need to make sure you do your background first, okay? So, but what you're going to notice is that I'm going to use the computer to do all the work for me. How about that? We're going to use the processing power of my AMD Athlon quad-core, whatever the heck it is, and we're going to use that puppy to do all the work for us. So what I did was I actually created the entire background. If you look at these layers over here, and we will dissect this as we go into the actual PSD, but I created my entire background in black and white. Isn't that interesting? I created the entire thing in black and white, and then what we're going to be doing is working with something called a gradient map. And I'll show you guys exactly how we go about doing that. And specifically what I'm going to be doing here is working with 2 gradient maps. One that will be like the orange fire in front, and then I will basically mask it away. You can see me working on the mask right up here. Sort of like push it back to gray, and then I'll do another gradient map. So basically the way that a gradient map works is that you get to choose, basically you're replacing the blacks and whites with different colors, like on a spectrum. So like say the dark colors are now, in this case, replaced with this purple. And then as it goes more towards white, it is now replaced with oranges and yellows. Same thing here. The darks are purples, and then it goes to more like a teal in this case. So there's 2 gradient maps that are happening right here, and we'll dissect those as we go into it in real time. So fear not, right now this is more just for entertainment, just kind of relax, watch the time lapse, nothing too crazy, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty as we finish this up. But yeah, I've been really digging this. I was actually really excited about this because I wanted to make it more of like a graphic piece. I wanted to make it feel a little bit more flat, still have some rendering in there, so kind of look like a splash, kind of look like a promo piece, but overall, like I wanted to find that happy medium between rendering and just having it be something that I can do very quickly. So we have our awesome line sculpting technique to the rescue, where basically we create the lines, and then as you guys know, I drop the colors behind it, much like an old animated cell, and then I go about lighting it with just soft brushes on the inside. And then I color the lines, which is how I go about getting effects like this one here. See how the hair right there, it looks like a highlight, but it's actually just me coloring the lines. And I'll show you guys also how to do that. So in fact, I'm gonna write this down so I make sure I go into both of those things. Coloring lines, because I know this is like super important. Because this is what I really want to drive home today. Coloring lines and gradient maps, because that's basically all I did in this piece. It looks like it took a lot of skill, but it's actually pretty dang easy. Just a couple tricks that really helped me out in this. It really saves time. It saves a lot of time to be able to color the lines as well as work with gradient maps, because heaven knows I freaking hate doing backgrounds. I hate trying to figure out what colors I'm going to use. It's really easy to just do it on the fly. And yeah, gradient maps allow you to do that. They give you superpowers. You'll be able to envision and change entire color spectrums with just your mind. And it is freaking awesome. Now, let's talk about the smoke. One of the reasons why I decided to put the smoke in there, right? Because originally I was thinking, it might kind of like obscure the face too much. Might look kind of hokey. But the biggest reason why I ended up putting that smoke in there was to highlight, or basically put a bigger difference in value between the teeth of Fishbone's and Jinx's face, right? Because I wanted to make sure that there were two clear layers happening there. Two clear layers of Fishbone's and then Jinx's face right behind Fishbone's. So the smoke allowed us to create that nice sandwich, right? The smoke in the middle, Fishbone's on one side, and then Jinx on the other. It gave us a nice effect, and it cleaned up our values. Which is a very important thing. I'm sure you guys know. Values are important, so make sure you have clear ones. Make sure your silhouettes are reading, right? We're punching those silhouettes, making them look good. All right, so I think this is the final one here. Doing overpainting now. Now that we've done the animation lines, we've dropped the color behind it. Now we're going back and front, back to the future. Putting our color on top of everything and cleaning things up, getting that sort of stylistic, that look that I like to have a lot of my paintings have, where there's lines that are visible around lots of the silhouettes, like say for the chin, but then in certain areas around like the ear and stuff, it becomes more painterly, becomes a little bit more realistic looking. So I personally really like to do stuff like that, and that's kind of where the overpainting comes in. That's where we start to soften things. Paint out the lines. And that will also be something that I will talk about, or at least I'll show it how I go about doing it on the paint over layers in the PSD. Paint overs. All right, doing some more line coloring, a little bit more paint overs there. And really, I think what was really fun about this was, again, the very dramatic lighting, because I knew right from the beginning that I wanted to have a very contrasting light source coming from behind, right? So it's lighting the back of her head. So we have this really, really stark contrast, like say under her arm there, her hair, and on her neck. And then we have this very cool shadow, like the shadows and the rest of the face are all very blue. They cool off. And they contrast very well against, hey, look at that, the background is very orange. I found that if you make the shadows very, very slightly different than what your main light source is, like the opposite, makes it look really nice. So naturally we had a bunch of fire. And so the shadows, or the ambient shadows, I really like them to be blue. All right, so that's enough of the entertainment. Let's get into the nitty gritty, shall we? Let's go ahead and zoom this out a tad bit. And let's get into the layers. So the first thing that I want to talk about is coloring lines. How do I go about coloring lines? So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get rid of this stuff here first. We're going to get rid of all this. We're going to take a trip back in time to this layer right here, which should have our lines on it. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so here is basically where we stood before I started doing a lot of the paint overs. Like, a lot of the paint overs can be seen here. Like, here, I'll zoom in and I'll show you. Okay, so specifically in the ear is where a lot of my paint overs can be seen. So if you take it off, see how a lot of those lines like come right back in? Oh no, actually, wait a minute. No, this is not the paint over. This is just the line coloring. Ah, okay. All right. So if you can believe it, this is actually all the colors of the lines. Here, let me unmask this really quick. Okay, so this is gonna make it look really scary. Oh my gosh, she looks like Draven. Look at that. This is why you must make sure to clip it back to the lines. Oh, that's so nice. But seriously, let's go back to this. So this is what happens. This is basically me coloring the lines. And these are all the colors that go into changing the actual line art. So if we take this away, we just have black line art. I know you guys love that. It's a hidden Draven. You guys can find the hidden Draven in the PSD. All right, so anyway, so all the lines are just black, okay? Now, when I want to start coloring them, something that I do is I'll create a new layer over top, right? And then what you want to do is clip it back. And I've taught you guys that the way to do that is you hold Alt, and you'll get this little icon that appears between those two layers. And if you click that, basically it says, okay, now whatever colors you lay on top of, like basically whatever colors you put on this layer, I will only adhere to the lines. I will only recognize them as being on the lines because you clipped it back to the lines. And if you take away the lines, this is what it looks like. See? So a lot of my colors are actually very simple. Look, it's just like little gradients. Little gradients. I let a lot of my lines do a lot of the work, right? I put a lot of my values actually into my lines. And then I go in with the color, right? We're on the color layer. And then I can color the lines like this. Actually, I'll make it a little darker. So it's like a very dark blue. And now, see how that now starts to very subtly, like, it almost feels like it's taking away the lines. It makes them more natural. It makes them softer. And then what I was doing for the rim lighting was I was just taking my brush and I was coloring the edge of the line like that. See? Same thing on Fishbones. I would just color this entire line. Whoops. I would just color that entire line just like that. And that's how you can go about creating rim lights, by using just your lines. Isn't that awesome? It saves so much time and it makes me so happy. It makes me so happy every time I do it. I love it. So yeah, I actually did a lot of the lighting just by coloring the lines. Isn't that crazy? You can color them whatever you'd like. It gives you the utmost of power, and it's freaking awesome. So a couple things that I want to have you guys keep in mind, just a couple tips from me. When I'm coloring the lines on the skin, I usually like to make them very, very dark red. Dark red will make your skin lines look more natural and alive, okay? So I want you guys to pay attention to how simple this is, or rather how subtle this is. It's a simple thing to do, but it's a very subtle effect. But when you zoom out, or when you look at it from a ways away, it makes a big difference. It makes a big, big difference, okay? And you can go into like the cheeks. See what I just did there? See, I took it from right there and then I colored just the lines, made the cheek softer now. The value still exists there, but now it's made with a red. So it looks a lot better, a lot more soft. So that's step one of how I like to go about erasing my lines, making my lines vanish before your very eyes. You know, my magician trick, okay? So, but basically, so let's go ahead and just put those, the actual colors back on. So you can see all those things are still at play here. I've used the lines to create a rim light on the ear as well. And let's move into the next thing. Which is gradient mapping. Let's talk about the background. Okay, so we're going to say goodbye to JINX for a little bit, and we're going to talk specifically about this background. So let's go ahead and get rid of a lot of this stuff. Let's go back, way back here. There is a layer on top of here that actually has a blur effect added to it. Now this is more so like I flattened it, like I flattened the image, and then I basically went into my filters, and then I just did blur, motion blur, and then, you know, you can set it up like this, right? And then it should preview like that. Now the reason I did this was because I wanted to create additional noise in the background, like an explosion just happened from behind her. And when you do that, the distortion helps to create that motion. It makes it feel more like it's a movie still, as opposed to being perfectly clear. It doesn't have as much motion as, say, this. But that was done after. I did my gradient maps. So let's go ahead and talk about gradient maps. All right, so let's get into it. Let's get fired off. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is, I don't think we need that one. This one here. Okay. So I'm going to show you guys first off how to just even make a gradient map. So let's say you've created a background in black and white, as you should, because letting the computer do the work for you is awesome. What you're going to do is say this is basically all the layers that comprise your background, okay? Take it away. You got your background. You can even flatten it. It can be a flat image, okay? Now what you're going to do is I'm going to have you go up to Layer, right? Layer, then down to New Adjustment Layer, and then you're going to go to this magical option called Gradient Map, or in other words, Color Wizard tool. Okay, and then you're going to hit OK, and then you'll notice that you have this, you're presented with this dubious bar. What are you supposed to do with this bar? We'll click that thing, and then you will see there's a bunch of like really crappy preset things that you can choose if you want to like be on like an acid trip or something. But really what I'm going to ask that you do is create your own, okay? So this is what I'm talking about. Okay, so here's a simple example here. So what you're doing here is on the left is going to represent your darks, okay? And you can select this color and choose whatever color you'd like your darks to be. So in this case, I chose like a dark kind of purplish, kind of blue, right? Then as we move up to white, I knew that I wanted it to go to yellow, okay? Something kind of like this. Kind of like that, okay? But we need some intermediate colors. We need something to blend them into each other so that way it looks more natural. So what I'm going to ask that you do is go ahead, let's move down the hue shift. Let's put some oranges in there. Oh, nice. Now it's looking more lively. I like it. Very good. Okay? And here's the cool part. Here's the really cool part. Is by moving these sliders around, you can basically control the lighting in real time. So say, look, like just by moving this way, now it's darker, right? And by moving it this way, moving the darks to the left, you now have more light. Isn't that interesting? Okay, so I know that I also want some more reds in here. So let's go ahead and put some reds. Drop some reds in there. Good. Very good. Cool. Let's make sure we can see zigs a little bit, like that. Actually gonna make this a little more red. Let's make it mas red. There we go. And again, we can make it brighter by dragging these things to the left. Dragging them to the left. There you go. All right, so there's an example of step one. Okay, so go ahead and hit OK. And the cool thing about this is that you can go back in and say, oh, you know what? I want to change these colors. You can go back at any time and modify your gradient maps by clicking this little Pokeball right here. Click that little Pokeball, gives you that bar, click it, and then you can, again, start messing around with whatever colors you want. But let's talk about this other thing that appears next to the Pokeball. This is your white box of magic. Now, this is where the awesome part happens, okay? So what you're going to do is within this white box, click that white box. Make sure you click it first because now you can work on it. You want to make sure you have black and white selected as your colors here. And now what you're going to do is you're going to start erasing, right? Or rather painting black. You want to think of it this way. Wherever you paint black, it is going to take away that color, right? It's going to take away the color. And see how we're presented once again with that black and white, the original thing that we had. Okay, so but here's where it gets really interesting, okay? And then you can erase it. You can also erase it to put it back in. See, check it out, watch. So you can erase to put the color back in wherever you want. So this is where the power is truly in your hands to do whatever you wish. But what I'm really excited to teach you guys about today is layering your gradient maps. Layering your gradient maps. This will be worth it. This will be worth the entire thing of you showing up, okay? So watch this. Okay, so this trick is really cool. So you know how we painted black and white? You can see over here the mask that you've painted. I want you to do this. Hold Control on your keyboard and then click that. Now you'll notice what it's done is it has selected everything that is actually on that gradient, or like what is still existing on there, okay? So it's selected basically where your colors are. Now what I'm going to have you do is invert that. Invert that selection by hitting Shift-Control-I. Now you've selected everything that's not on the gradient. Can you guess what we're going to do next? That's right, we're going to create a new gradient map. So Layer, New Adjustment Layer, Gradient Map 2. It says 3, but you know it's 2. And then check it out. Now you can create a whole new world, a whole new gradient map. So let's say, okay, well, my mentality going into this was, okay, well, we've got like, we've got plenty of oranges. Now I kind of want to cool off the background. So let's have like some blues in there. Let's have this background smoke be blue. Whoops. Let's have the background smoke be blue. And then the lights will be sort of like, maybe like a teal or something like that. But again, they're desaturated. Desaturate them. So you get something kind of like that. And here's the other cool thing, is you can kind of do like a little bit of a cheat in a way. I mean, I don't want to call it a cheat, but it's kind of cool to do. If you do this, where you actually put a light color behind the dark color, it creates a very interesting effect. Sort of in the smoky area. It will sort of, again, it allows you to play around with the values that you've placed down, and you can start to create new things, okay? So now you have something like this, and it looks a little bit kind of weird over here, but again, if you don't like it, then no, in this case, you don't have to suck it, right? You can actually, again, paint it out. You can paint it out, and I think I didn't worry about this because JINX was in the way. Yeah, JINX was going to be in there, so I wasn't worrying about that area, so because I knew the character was going to be covering it. But anyway, see, that's basically all I did. I layered those two gradient maps on one another. Okay, and then what you can do is you can go back in and sort of like to kind of blend the lines a little bit. Sometimes there will be like some interesting areas where you need to go back in and kind of like clean it up. So all you got to do is just go back in there. Actually, I'll put this one in front. Yeah, I'll put the orange one in front. Basically, you want to make sure whatever gradient map is representing the foreground, make sure that's in front, right? As I nearly choked to death. Okay, and you can erase, right, to kind of blend those lines. Bring it back in. Isn't that awesome? So I hope that helps you guys out with how I went about doing the gradient maps. My final ones ended up being slightly different. You can see they're a little bit more desaturated, but that's because I was comparing it towards JINX. Again, a lot of my time when I'm doing these gradient maps is spent like I just go in and I will literally just kind of mess around with the colors like very slightly. Like I'll be like, okay, well this one's pretty good, but let's go back in and click the Pokeball and be like, okay, maybe this needs to be a little bit more desaturated. Maybe it needs to be more like this, right? More like that. Maybe this one needs to be a little bit brighter. Just playing around with a bunch of different things. And this is why I like gradient maps so much, because it will save you time and it allows you to get really quick results, and it allows you to envision your background. It allows you to envision the light that's going to be affecting your character. All right. I told you I was going to be loading you guys up with knowledge today. So I hope that helps you guys out with your backgrounds. The last thing that we're going to talk about is a couple more things just in terms of paint overs with the PSD. Then we're going to open up. Actually, let's open up questions right now. Please cast your questions on the catapults. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please cast your questions over the castle walls, as has been instructed in the video, and I'll answer them. And in the meantime, let's go ahead and talk about paint overs. Piltovers. We've been going for about half an hour. This is great. Freaking awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into this. I'll talk a little bit about each layer. Basically, I'll go up the layers and I'll talk about why I did what I did, kind of, you could say. So let's go ahead and start with this one. So the differences between these two are very simple, right? But you can see where I'm going in and I'm starting to refine lines, like specifically look at Fishbones' tooth there. You can see how I'm sort of like taking these lines and I'm lowering the contrast between them. Basically what I do is I take the actual color, I'll take the color of the line like this, and I'll just blend it. I'll blend it in. So if I were to do this over again, I basically just eyedrop that, and then I'll start to blend the line. See now how that line exists, but now it's just the contrast of these two different colors. Isn't that awesome? So I just go about doing that. That's how I make my lines disappear. You blend the lines. Blend those lines. Okay? Blend them good. So we got up to here, right? And there's some minor adjustments in JINX's face. I think I ended up doing something weird with this one that I didn't like. I think I made her chin. Yeah, you can see the differences in the chins from here to the next one. Her chin was a little bit pointy and a little bit too small in this one, and I didn't like it. I compared it back to the old sketch, and I liked how soft her face would look before. So naturally, you know, that's another good thing to do is save multiple versions. Save multiple versions. That's why I have like 10 different JINX layers here. That way I can compare and be like, okay, which one do I like more? Do I like this nose? Do I like that chin? This eye? You know, did I paint that thing weird or did it look better before? It's really, really handy. And make sure you take breaks too. All right, so questions coming in. Nerogeist is asking, what was my opinion on Cintiqs? I worked with them when I was in-house at Riot. I personally like them if you're doing stuff in the short term. Like if you're more of a hobbyist, then I would say it is very good. It's a very easy transition from sketches to working on Cintiq. And for those of you who don't know what a Cintiq is, it's basically like this, but imagine there's like a screen in it, so you can literally like draw on the screen. It's really cool. So I like it. It's an easy transition, but the problem is that I could never really figure out exactly how to hold my head while I was working on them. So I developed like neck problems and everything. That's one of the reasons why I stick with the normal tablet, because I can draw down here, right? I can draw down here and keep my eyes straight ahead. All right. Swiss Fonda's asking about final touches. We'll get into that in just a moment because I do have one more thing for you, and that has to do with blooming and glow effects. Let's see. Yeah. Extra Toothpaste is asking about the tablet I use. Yes, it's an Intuos 4, medium-sized Intuos 4 with little Emma stickers on it. This is where you got to get these. This is where the real power comes from. So yeah, I like it. My brother's got an Intuos 5, but I feel like the reception on it is a little bit slower. Like it's weird, like because I always flip my pen back and forth, but I feel like when I do that, it doesn't pick up that I'm on the eraser sometimes, and I have to like flip it over a couple times. It's just kind of weird. I don't know. Maybe it's user error. I don't know, but anyway. Let's see here. Hydro Man. I probably butchered that name. Sorry. Hi, Keenan. I've been using brushes for my drawings, and they're awesome, but I was wondering, how do you manage your lines in order for them to not look transparent but completely opaque? I have to paint line over and over. It's kind of annoying. Okay, so a couple things. Make sure that you are, in fact, what I actually end up doing, how I paint lines, is I do it like this, right? I'll have my brush, and the way that I make them look opaque is not by like pressing really hard, right, to do it. What I'll actually end up doing is I work very, very rough. And a lot of my early stuff, if you go back and look at the old things of JINX, I mean, look at this. This is how it starts. It starts like this. So I'm working with lines, but I actually am technically painting things over and over again. So yeah, I'm painting things over and over again, right? Like say it's like Fishbones' face, right? Like this. And then what I end up doing is I go back in and I sculpt away. I sculpt the lines to be how I want them to be. That's why they look opaque. I'm not drawing it perfectly the first time and then like, you know, there's like extra texture in there and it's like really annoying. So do it like that. Try it out. The technique might work for you. All right, last question. And then I need a drink of water because I'm freaking dying. Zanben is asking a great question. He or she is asking, in the image making process, I like that. It's very, very intellectual way to say it. I'm an image maker. During the image making process, I personally think that rendering is a drag. I love the design process. Is it normal to like one but not the other? And what do you prefer, design versus rendering? I'm glad you asked that question because I relate completely with you, Zanben. It's basically, yeah, I love designing. I love basically creating the sketch, but once it comes down to rendering and kind of finishing things up, there's always this point where I go into this weird, like, it's like this trance, like this dark area of the rendering part where it's like basically you got to tune out your brain. You got to figure out anything like halfway through the piece, you're like looking at it, it's like, I don't even know what I'm looking at anymore. It's like, I think this looks good, but I know that I can't trust my own eyes because somebody else who looks at this for the first time is going to see it different than me. And you just like start going through all these thoughts in your mind. It's like, oh, maybe I suck. Maybe I shouldn't finish it. Maybe I should just stop forever, you know? So it's just a natural thing. It's a natural thing. But yeah, it's normal to like one over the other. But I would suggest that you at least get comfortable with knowing how to do it, right? And that's what I'm trying to push myself to do as well. Try to find a technique. Like I said, I'm trying to find that middle ground between painting the splash for a few weeks, right? And then doing like a simple sketch, right? A simple sketch, but then finding that middle ground where you can get the best of both worlds. So that's my suggestion to you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to wrap up the questions. Sorry if I can't answer all of your questions. You got so many good ones. But we are going to go ahead and end today's show. So thank you guys once again for joining me live on Twitch. People on YouTube, thumbs up if you like it, thumbs down if you don't. Don't forget, if you want to pick up the PSD of this, click that link down at the bottom right. And people on Twitch, you know where to go. So, yes. Yeah, that's about it. Oh, last thing, I will be doing a show this Thursday. However, the following week, I'm going to be taking off because I'm going to be going to KNKL in San Francisco. So if you guys are living out in San Francisco, you want to come visit me, I am going to be there. My girlfriend is actually going to have a booth, and I will be assisting her to run it. But for the most part, I'll be walking around. But if you happen to run into me there and you want to come visit, then definitely come on down to KNKL in San Francisco. So until next time, you guys take care. Wait. I did forget about Bloom. Okay. Normally we don't do this, but you got a good point, Hamzilla. Good point, Hamzilla. You got me back. You got me back because I did forget about Bloom. How dare I? How dare I? I don't like promising stuff and not delivering. Okay, so let's get back into that. Last thing. Last thing. Bloom. Bloom. Okay, how do you make Bloom? So this is a final thing that I like to do. You guys are so funny. You guys are so funny. I love you guys. Okay, so Bloom. Bloom is basically what happens right here. See the slight little glows that happen around the rim lights? The rim lights, such as Fishbone's eye, up in here. Basically wherever the high contrast light is happening, I'm putting in Bloom. And I'm going to show you how to do that right now. And the first thing that you do, now I want you to be very careful with this because it can be addicting. It can be very addicting, and I don't want you to be a hard light user, okay, or a hard light addict, because that's basically what you do here. You set your layer style, right? So you got your layer, and right here is your layer style. You're going to set it to hard light, hard light. And then basically all you do is you select your color that you'd like to bloom with, and then make sure you have a soft brush picked. And then you go ahead and do this. See? Makes a cool bloom. Now you must use this with caution. You must use this with caution and the utmost of responsibility. Okay? And you can go back in and kind of clean it up. You know, put a little bit of yellow in there. Why not? Put a little bit of yellow in there. It makes the reds look hotter. You know, like that. So I basically go through and I just go through and I'll light the edges, you know, very, very subtly, right? Obviously, I'm exaggerating it so you guys can see what I'm doing. Sometimes what I'll actually do is if there's like, say, there was a really bright light behind JINX, you can even have it spill into the character like this. You know, you can kind of light the edges, have it spill into the character. But again, there's not like a super bright light behind JINX. But theoretically, you could do it here, you know, something like that. Just depends on what effect you're going for. But that's what I like to do. That's what I like to do. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is actually going to wrap up the show. Thank you, Hamzilla, for bringing that up. I'm not coming back this time. I don't care if I forgot something. You guys take care. I'll see you on Thursday. Till then, stay awesome.